So it's just impossible to have a good time. You can't. There is no playlist to get you through it.
It's kind of like California.
Yeah, it's a lot like Southern California in that way. It's true.
Like LA.
Like LA, yeah. So I mean, that's one way that it's different, and I don't know. I do think that something happens in South Louisiana. Things happen to me in South Louisiana where I didn't feel as isolated as I did in North Louisiana, but maybe that's because I was an older person. You know, when you grow up in your parents' house, you're pretty isolated because you're going to be in your parents' house. But I'll never forget, you know, you could go to a group. I mean, I don't know that South Louisiana is like this anymore today, but when I was here, you could go to a grocery store, and I remember looking for something in the grocery store, and there was a woman in the grocery store, and I couldn't find it. And I'm sitting there talking to myself like, where's the Tony Sacherays? Like, you know, like, and she's like, oh, it's right here. That night, I was eating at her house. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that wasn't a plan, but that's how it ended up. Like, we ended up in conversation, and there was just, and that's just how things ended up. And I don't know that things like that happen in the same way in North Louisiana.
Anywhere, it can happen anywhere.
Yeah, maybe. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a good question though. I should write a poem about that. I should discover that in a poem.
And make it fun.
There's a question over here?
Yeah. Can you give us a little insight into your creative process? Clearly music is like anything for you, so you sit down and you write? Is it like an hour to write a poem, a month?
Yeah, it's different times for different poems, but I guess I'll start from the beginning. So I don't really, and I tried to get at this today when I was teaching the workshop that I was teaching, and I'm going to teach a workshop, I think tomorrow, or maybe the day after tomorrow. Is it tomorrow? Tomorrow. I teach a workshop tomorrow, and while my poems are steeped in narrative and folklore, and I'm very interested in writing poems where if somebody was talking about the poem, they would be able to say, oh, the one about blank. So I'm not like a crazy avant-garde experimental poet, right? At the same time, I don't start a poem in story. I don't mean to let y'all down when I say that. I know everybody loves a good story. I love a good story too. But I start a poem in sound, and in music, and in rhythm, right? And what that means for me is I get a line, sometimes I overhear a line, I hear somebody say something, I steal it. Or I get a line, you know, that I just, you know, it just comes to me, right? And I write that line down. And after that, I try to write another line down that riffs off of the sound of that line. And I keep doing that, line to line to line, until I hit something, until I've exhausted something. And it's just practice that lets me know, oh, I've exhausted something here. And then when I look back at what I've written, it makes no sense at all, because it's all been written by sound. And what I try to do is I take a step back from it, and I look at it and I ask myself questions about it. What is the personality of this draft? Who is the speaker? I don't assume everything I write is going to be about me. For instance, in one of the poems I read tonight, the line, I'm such an ugly girl, I'm such an ugly girl, was written before anything else in the poem was written, just because I liked the way it sounded. It sounded like an emotional declaration for a person to make. And so I liked the way it sounded, so I wrote it down. Do you understand what I mean? But I understood that I wasn't going to be the speaker, because clearly I'm not a girl, and God knows I ain't ugly. So after coming across a line like that, I have to ask myself, so who could be saying that? And then what comes before that? And what comes after that? Who do I know in my head that might say something like that? And that's what makes the speaker of that poem Janis Joplin. Because when I was a kid, my mom and dad, bless their heart, they were so broke. They had this van, I used to call it the first van because it was so old. And it could only get one station on the, and this is, when I say old, some of y'all are gonna know what I'm talking about. The radio in the van, you push the buttons like this to get this, y'all don't do that no more. Some of y'all looking at me like, I don't know what you're talking about. But you would have to like push, they were like these little black buttons and you could push them in. I used to think that was so much fun, and my dad would get mad at me because I would just be pushing buttons. He'd be like, we can't get no more stations. But the one station we could get was the oldies channel. So I always rode around listening to like these songs that were much older than I am. And so when I went to school, which is pretty much the advent of hip hop, I was listening to the Temptations and the Pink Floyd and the Janis Joplin and the Supremes, because that's what was being played on the old. I thought they were like the lick, and all my friends were looking at me like, what are you going through? I would be as honest as I could. And everybody would be like, what is wrong with you? Don't nobody do this no more. You know, and everybody at the time, they were excited about like LL Cool J or Run DMC or somebody. You know what I mean? So anyway, I start with music. I look at what I get that doesn't make much sense, and then I try to move it toward narrative. But I don't want to move it toward narrative so much that it loses the mystery of poetry, because I like to have lines that can have several meanings at one time. Do you understand what I mean? So that's pretty much the process. Now, do I write sometimes that'll take, the oldest poem in that first book before that book came out was about 7 years old. But then sometimes if I'm really on it and I'm doing what I'm supposed to do and I'm in a constant mode of reading and writing and doing what I'm supposed to do, I can get a poem like that and write it down. I wrote the poem that actually got taken, that was published in the New Yorker. I promise y'all, I wrote that poem on the way back from the bathroom at 3 o'clock in the morning. You know how like you wake up and you gotta use the bathroom? I wrote that poem. I thought it was funny when they took it and they published it. Because I literally typed the poem in my phone and then like emailed it to myself, and then I was like, oh, that's pretty much done. But I had that gift because I had been doing so much work on poems at that time. That's not a gift that you're gonna get just because you're a genius. You understand what I mean? So it depends on what's going on. I hardly write. I do write sitting, but not really. So the computer's sitting. I don't really write by hand as much as I used to. I type a lot in my phone. Like I type notes toward a poem in my phone. But I usually am typing sitting down. And then I get up when I get stuck and I start walking around the house. I mean, to look at me, to see me like writing a poem, you would think I was like some sort of like crazy homeless guy or something, because it's usually like 1:30 in the morning and I'm mumbling to myself. When I found out I was staying with Patrice, I was so glad that the house was like separate from, because all I saw was guest room, and I was like, oh man, this ain't gonna work out. And then when we were driving, I was telling her, when we were driving from the airport, I was telling her, I was saying, oh, this is good, so you won't be bothered by a lot of sound. And she was like, oh, you won't be bothered by a lot of sound. Because I'm usually like, I mean, seriously, you know, I'm in my underwear, and I'm just like, you know, like this is what crazy people look like, you know? And I'm like looking up in the air as if words are up there or something. And then like I get something and I run back to the computer before I forget it. So that's pretty much how the poems are written. And then the other thing I want to say is, anything you do like this, like the work that y'all are doing with this festival, anything you do is done better when you can do it in community. And so it's been really good for me that I have other friends who are poets. And so when I write something, I have friends who are truthful with me. And that's another good thing to have if you want to be a poet. It's not just friends who are poets, but friends who are going to tell you the truth. And I'll send them something and they'll be like, I don't think so. Maybe back to the drawing board. Or they'll say, you know, this is fabulous, you know, this is good. You can put this in a book and you can send this out to a magazine. So that's the process. Thank you. There was another question over, okay.
Since you edit on your computer, how often do you save drafts?
Save my, wait, how, do I save the old ones you mean?
So like when you change a word,
Yeah.
you save the whole word.
No.
Or every time you change a word, you save that.
No. So what I do is, each draft is on its own page, okay, so let me explain this. So I'll type out what is the first draft of the poem, and then I'll work on it. I cut and paste it right under itself, and then I work on it. Then I cut and paste that under itself, and then sooner or later it's done. And then I take whatever's at the bottom when I feel like it's done. And sometimes that's 2 pages, and sometimes that's 202 pages. And I wish I was exaggerating when I said 202 pages. And I cut and I paste and I put it in another document of all the poems that are done. Does that make sense? Yeah. Any other questions? I like answering questions. This is fun. Yes, ma'am.
How many poems have you written?
How many poems have I written? I don't know. I've never counted them. I think there's something like 44 poems in my first book, maybe 48 poems in my second book, and then I've written some poems since then. Let's say I've written 35 poems since then. So how many is that? Somebody who does math. I do words. I don't.
Oh, no.
So I guess that's all. I mean, and sometimes you think you got a poem and you don't. So maybe it's a give or take. So somewhere between 100 and 200, right? Yeah. Yes, sir.
You need to stop being a comedian.
Yeah, I'll work on that. I'll work on that. Yes, sir.
So when you talked about the process, now you said music. Now is this music that you're making up in your head, or is it music based on songs you've heard along the way?
Yeah.
And also, is it incidents like going back to the shooting? Does something like that inspire you to write about it?
Yeah, I'm not aware that I'm going to write about the shooting when I sit down to write, although I'm always glad when I can write something that actually comments on culture or comment on the time or comment on history, right? So it's not the original intention. I always assume that the things that I'm passionate about and the things I'm thinking about are going to come out in the poem anyway. Because I really believe, I mean, and I'll say this tomorrow, so if some of you are coming to the workshop, just don't get sick of saying it. But you should know what your obsessions are. You should know what you love. You should know what you're passionate about. And you should already just hold on to that and call that that's like there. That's at the base of it. That's the foundation. And so a lot of times people are like, oh, what am I going to write about? But I don't think you ever have to worry about what you're going to write about. Because I think you only write about maybe 3 subjects the whole time you're alive. Do y'all understand what I mean? And I think that's okay. Because that shows that you were concerned very deeply about 3 things. And there's nothing wrong with that. Do you understand what I mean? And so I think, so that's the first, that's the last part. Now what was, you asked me another
Like the music you said?
Oh yeah, so all the music, I like music a lot, so all the music that I've listened to, I'm sure is influencing what I'm doing. And I really do like, I mean, in my head, I'm like, I mean, you know, like, I would have been a musician if I could work with other people, but I'm so, like, selfish, and I'm such a bad person that I can't work with other people. You know, if you're a musician, you got to work with somebody. You know what I'm saying? So I'm sort of like orchestrating it. And when I revise a poem, I hope y'all can hear me. We might be spending the night together. When I'm working on a poem, I say certain things because poetry is the metaphor, because music is the metaphor for the writing for me. And I really think that's important that everybody have their own metaphor. So for instance, if you're a runner, it's really important that you can apply what you do as a runner, pacing, breath, speed, distance, that you can make use of those terms when you're writing a poem. That will help you a lot. Now you might not be able to translate what any of that means to anybody else when you know something's not done. When you say to yourself, this hasn't gone the distance, or this isn't fast enough. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Other people aren't going to know what you're talking about because they're not runners. But it'll help you revise your poems. And so for me, I will say things that are real crazy while I'm working on a poem, like, there's not enough bass here. Or, I should put some horns here. Or, do you understand what I'm saying? So that's sort of what I'm thinking about when I say music. The other thing I'm thinking about when I say music is literally, there's a moment in a poem that I read tonight where I said, we walk as if the house behind us isn't warm enough for my feet. And I just think that sounds good. Do you know what I mean? And so like, if I write a line like, we walk as if the house behind us isn't warm enough for my feet, if I write a line like that, then I want to make use of the sounds that are in that bit. Like the sound of warm, the sound of feet, the sound of behind. I want to make use of that and sort of come back to those sounds again as I am writing the poem. Does that make sense? There was a question in the back. Oh, right here, yes, sir.
Question also. During the time of the Ku Klux Klan, during the lynching of black people, and she wrote the song about strange fruit. You heard that one?
Yeah, that's Billie Holiday.
Billie Holiday. She called bodies, black bodies, hanging from trees, strange fruits. Beautiful, beautiful song.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I love a lot of Billie Holiday can I just say this thing about Billie Holiday? What I love most about Billie Holiday, one of the things I love most about Billie Holiday is that she was, well, there are two things I love about her. Number one is that she was an improvisational genius.
Yeah.
She would take what were standards of the time. I mean, there used to be a time, now we got a lot of songs, right? But there used to be a time that there was only like 10 songs. Seriously, I wish I was exaggerating. But like, it wasn't until the late 50s that everybody was like, oh, record a new song. Even in the 1970s, if you pay attention to like what's going on with music and popular music, in the late 60s and the early 70s, people are still just recording each other's songs. Like you have everybody, in the early 70s, everybody is recording stuff that the Beatles recorded in the 60s. In Motown, if something was a hit, everybody else at Motown recorded it. That's why Gladys Knight and Pips and Marvin Gaye got heard it through the grapevine. That's why Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell and Diana Ross got an Ain't No Mountain High Enough. I mean, and when you look, it's so funny, like, now to re-record a song needs to be like really old for you to do it. But the distance in those songs would be like 1 year or 2 years, you know what I mean? But at the time, going back to Billie Holiday, when she was recording songs, she would take the standards of the day and she would change them so that she was sort of lilting behind the music, right? And then she would just allow for this bluesy quality to come into those songs. And she would, ultimately, she was a translator of what were the standards of the time.
Right.
So the popular standards of the time got translated into something where she could change the meaning of the songs. So there would be a song that was supposedly happy, like a song like "Them Their Eyes," right?
Yeah.
I fell in love with you the first time I looked into them their eyes. But there would be something that she could do that would let you know she didn't want to fall in love. And she would simply do that with phrasing. So that's one thing that I really loved about Billie Holiday. The other thing I love about Billie Holiday, and I love about a lot of singers, is that as she got older and her voice began to fail her, because she was using a lot of drugs and doing all kinds of things that really aren't good for the
Right.
voice. Also, Billie Holiday was singing under different circumstances than what big deal singers sing now. Like Billie Holiday had to get up and sing every night. And sometimes she didn't have a microphone, do you know what I mean? But she always found a way to make a song happen and make a song the success she wanted the song to be. And I don't mean success in terms of financial success. She knew how to bring a song to its completion, in spite of the fact that she didn't have the voice to do it.
I kind of get
And I really love that quality. I've always liked, my favorite singer